Hello everyone and welcome to Fiction Friday. Today we have episode 6 of The Lightning. I hope you enjoy it. It was barely mid-morning when Lon returned to the army's camp. Everything appeared in good order. The patrols made their rounds, smoke rose from the cook tent, and no one was screaming. Relief washed over him. After the madness at the watchtower, he'd half feared to return and find ogre sorcerers overhead blasting the place to bits. Of course, if they intended to attack the army, they wouldn't have crossed the mountains hundreds of miles away. That brought him back to the question that had dogged him the whole flight back. What were they up to? He landed directly in front of the command tent and the pages opened the flaps for him without comment. The general paced behind his map table, scowling and clasping his hands behind his back. The moment he spotted Lon, he asked, "Well?" Lon gave him a quick briefing. When he finished, he added, "This is without a doubt something we've never seen before. I feel confident that 10 to 20 ogres have entered the kingdom." General Cordwright scowled and smoothed his beard with his right hand. "Flying ogres? How is that even possible?" "I haven't the slightest idea, sir, but it's the only explanation for what I found. I wish there was some other way it might have happened, but I'm at a loss." The general waved his hand. "I don't doubt you, Lon. It's just a hard thing to wrap my mind around. If they have, heaven forbid, ogre sorcerers, why hasn't the dragon ever sent them against us? Kingdom sorcerers are our single biggest advantage. If the enemy had the means to counter them, we'd be finished." "My thoughts exactly, sir. But the more I try to puzzle it through, the more I realize trying to think like an ogre isn't something I'm capable of." "Thank heaven for that. Why don't you take a rest, grab some food, and return to your regular duties? I'll prepare a message to send to the capital just as soon as I figure out a way to tell them that doesn't make me sound like a madman." Lon bowed and took his leave. Flying ogres did sound crazy, but he knew what he saw. He debated returning to his cot, but decided to try and hunt up a snack first. Maybe the cook still had something left over from breakfast. Sausage and a biscuit would be nice. Halfway to the mess tent, multiple flares of soul force burst to life near the camp perimeter. He turned north, trying to track the source. It felt like the power originated beyond the camp. It didn't feel like another sorcerer, so maybe warlords patrolling the perimeter powered up? What were they up to? With all the recent weirdness, Lon wasn't willing to take a chance that it was nothing. Forgetting his meal, he leapt into the air and flew towards the energy sources. He'd barely left the ground when 2 of them vanished. 3 more were snuffed out a second later. He put on a burst of speed. Only death cut off the flow of soul force that quickly. Swirling snow and a clash of steel on steel announced the battle. 5 bodies stained the snow red. More soldiers ran toward the sounds of battle, but they weren't warlords and would be of no help in this sort of fight. Not that Lon would either. The combatants moved so fast he couldn't see them to aim a blast. 2 lines appeared in the snow heading deeper into the camp. Lon raced after them, uncertain if it was the enemy or allies seeking reinforcements. The pass led straight to the command tent. Both page boys lay dead on the ground out front. Heavy blows had cut them nearly in half. From within came the sounds of combat. Lon powered up his shield and stepped through the flap. Once again he found himself confronted by a battle invisible to him. Though powerful, the general faced 2 opponents with potent soul forces of their own. How did he help when he couldn't even see the battle? Damn it, Lon hated feeling helpless. There had to be some way he could help. "General, touch my shoulder and I'll extend my shield to protect you." A moment later, a hand far too big to be human made contact with his soul force barrier. Lon lashed out, sending spears of soul force lancing into the enemy. 3 missed, but 2 pierced through. A blue-skinned ogre, its face covered by a white dragon mask, collapsed on the tent floor bleeding from the gut and thigh. Lon blasted its head to ruin so it couldn't heal. Seconds later, another ogre collapsed in front of the map table, one arm missing at the elbow and bleeding from a massive gash in its chest. Before Lon could blast it, the brute's head went flying. The general appeared then, a shallow, already healing cut on his left arm, his only injury. "Excellent timing, Lon. I'll give the bastards credit. It takes a certain kind of crazy to try and kill a man in the middle of an army. If they hadn't taken half a second to murder the boys outside, they might have finished me." We should get you to safety, sir. There are at least 2 more enemies nearby. Forget safety. General Cordray brushed past him and out the flap. I need to rally my men and deal with those mad beasts. Lon sensed the approaching soul force an instant before an unseen blade drove through the general's chest. No! The killer ogre appeared for a second, plenty of time for Lon to blow his head to smithereens. He ignored it as it collapsed and scrambled to heal the general. A cursory look told him everything he needed to know. The blow had bisected the general's heart. With the berserker's strength behind it, even General Cordray's iron skin hadn't slowed the weapon. Lon slammed his fist on the ground. Why hadn't he extended his shield at once? Damn him for a fool. He'd assumed the enemies were far enough away that the immediate danger had passed. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Now the general was dead and he had only himself to blame. At the very least, he needed to figure out why. He took to the air and raced toward the site of the battle. Perhaps the last ogre knew something useful. Lon reached the edge of the camp just as one of the warlords raised his spear to finish off the final attacker. A beam of soul force shot out and wrapped around the man's hand, stopping the tip of the spear inches from the ogre's chest. Wait, I need to question the brute before you kill him. Lon landed several feet away and strode over. The warlord lowered his spear. What can you hope to learn from him? These creatures are little more than animals. Lon nodded. I used to think that as well, but I fear we've underestimated our opponents. He bound the wounded ogre so it couldn't attack, crouched, and flicked its mask off. Do you understand me? The monster just stared at him. You're wasting your time, sorcerer, the warlord said. Best let me kill the thing so we can resume our patrol. Lon wasn't ready to give up yet. Your companions killed the general. He ignored the gasp from the gathered soldiers and focused on the prisoner. Its lips drew back in a crude imitation of a smile. It did understand. He knew it. Your mission is complete, though your comrades are dead. The ogre made a deep rumbling gurgle in the back of his throat. It took Lon a moment to realize it was laughing. Only part of the mission is complete. Though its pronunciation was crude, the ogre spoke the human tongue clearly enough. More of your leaders will die today. Lon cocked his head. Why tell me? Because it's too late for you to do anything about it. Your kingdom will die, human, and the Queen's glorious winter will cover your land forever. Lon glanced up at the warlord and nodded. The spear fell, piercing the ogre through the heart, killing it instantly. What does it mean? The warlord ripped his spear from the dead ogre and shook off the blood. It means I need to warn the capital and hope I'm not too late. An exhausted Archmage Samhael trudged back to his office to catch a few hours' sleep before he'd return to the king's side. In all his years as a sorcerer, he'd never dealt with a lung infection as stubborn as King Adam's. No matter how many times he burned the illness away, it returned. If only the king was a warlord like his son, he could just heal the infection on his own. He might better wish for the moon to fall in the Northlands and kill the dragon while he was at it. The hall grew blurry and his eyes watered. Just a little sleep, that would make all the difference. Fortunately, he only had a short walk from the king's chambers to the unused bedroom he'd appropriated for his temporary use. The unpredictable course of the illness demanded that he stay close to His Majesty at all times. Samhael pushed the door open inside. A rolled-up scroll lay on his desk, sealed and unopened. He choked back tears of exhaustion. Maybe it could wait. Surely 5 or 6 hours more or less wouldn't matter. He scrubbed a hand across his face and dropped into his chair. Sleep wouldn't come until he read the damn letter, so best to just do it. A flick of his thumb cracked the seal and he unrolled the paper. He leapt out of his chair. Exhaustion burned away. Samhael raced out of his temporary workshop and back down the hall. Dornkirk sat in front of the king's door. The king's champion sprang to his feet. What is it? Trouble. General Cordray has been killed by ogre assassins, and a small force has crossed the mountains. Their current location is unknown. I need to alert the king. Dornkirk shook his head. He just fell asleep. He needs rest, not more problems. I know that, Samhael said. Better than anyone. But a new general needs to be appointed. We can't risk the northern army falling into chaos, not with winter so close. So appoint someone. Cordray must have had a deputy, someone he trusted as his second. Besides, It's Duke Iceborne's responsibility to appoint a general, not His Majesty's. Samuel stared for a moment. How had he forgotten that? The lack of sleep must have taken more of a toll than he thought. Of course, I'll send the necessary messages. What about the prince? If there are ogres hunting in the kingdom, it's not a good time for a tour. Dornkirk pursed his lips, then nodded. Call him back. They can't have gotten far anyway. I'll send some of my Crimson Legionnaires to collect them. If there's trouble, they'll handle it. Dornkirk settled back down and closed his eyes. If there's anything else, let me know. I will, Samuel said. The Archmage turned and shuffled back to his office. He was losing it. If the king appointed a general without Duke Iceborne's consent, it would lead to a major incident. With the king in such poor condition, they needed to avoid his stress as much as possible. Though he'd often resented the taciturn champion, at times like this Samuel appreciated Dornkirk's solid presence. The man gave off an unshakable feeling that steadied everyone around him. Either that, or he frightened them more than whatever threat they faced. Samuel grinned. He didn't fear much, but Dornkirk made his short list. It took 10 minutes to pen 2 brief letters, one to the Northern Army and the second to Duke Iceborne. That should settle things for the time being. Next, Samuel conjured a summoning sphere and sent it after Lydia. His second wouldn't have any trouble tracking down Andrew. The Bright Moon Inn stood 2 stories tall and was surrounded by a long stable on one side and a woodshed on the other. A raised porch ran the length of the front of the building and wrapped around out of sight. Beside the door hung a simple sign with a quarter moon carved into it. The place couldn't have been any more ordinary. Frederick took it all in at a glance. No archers waited around the closed windows, and no movement drew his gaze to a potential attacker. It looked as safe as any unfamiliar building could be. He nodded once and led the way into the dirt yard. They were almost to the porch when a boy of perhaps 10 years and dressed in filthy clothes came running out of the stable. "Take your horses, sir?" the boy asked. "Yes, indeed." Andrew dismounted and slung his saddlebags over his shoulder. He reached into the pouch at his belt and tossed the boy a silver crown. "See that they're well taken care of." The stable boy made the coin disappear and smiled. "Count on me, sir." Andrew chuckled and made his way up the steps to the door. He reached for the handle, but Frederick stepped in front of him. "Best let me go first." "For heaven's sake, Frederick, it's an inn, not a den of assassins." Andrew sighed when Frederick refused to move. "Fine, have it your way." Frederick pushed the door open and stepped inside. His gaze raked the room, but nothing more threatening than a serving girl in a low-cut green and blue dress presented itself. The common room looked every bit as mundane as the outside of the building. If you plopped the inn down in any corner of the kingdom, it wouldn't have drawn a second look. Andrew stepped in beside him, eyed the girl, and grinned. Frederick immediately reevaluated the level of her threat and dismissed her again. The only danger here was to the prince's honor, not his life. "Can I show you to a table?" the girl asked. "You certainly can." Andrew fell in behind her, leaving Frederick and Helena to follow. Helena looked his way and rolled her eyes. Frederick finally smiled. If Andrew ended up with a serving girl, he'd have the evening with Helena, and that wouldn't be a bad thing. They settled into a corner table, and Andrew ordered a round of ale. At least Frederick didn't need to worry about the prince getting drunk. Any warlord worthy of the name could burn away the effects of alcohol in a second. "Her name's Robin." Andrew seemed unable to tear his gaze away from the girl. "Isn't that pretty?" "Heaven's mercy, you'd think you never saw a girl before," Helena said, speaking Frederick's thoughts out loud. Robin delivered their drinks, bobbed a curtsy, and returned to cleaning the common room. When she'd gone, Andrew said, "It isn't that she's anything special. It's that I can't remember flirting with a girl who didn't want anything from me. It's a wonderful change of pace." Frederick grunted and took a sip of his ale, more to be polite than because he liked the taste of the stuff. As the evening fell, the common room grew more and more crowded. Merchants and their guards coming or going to the capital mingled with farmers bringing late-season crops to market. The atmosphere was warm and agreeable, especially with the delightful aromas of roasting pork and apple pie wafting out of the kitchen. Frederick's mouth watered as he waited for their meal to arrive. 2 more serving girls joined Robin as the crowd grew, but she made certain no one else approached their table. It appeared Andrew would get his wish. The girl was clearly smitten. Hours later, their stomachs full, and the other guests having all left for their beds, Andrew stood, straightened his tunic, and approached Robin. Helena smirked. "Think she'll go with him?" She seems interested, Frederick said, his disinterest total. How much do you think she'll charge? Frederick shrugged. Despite the fact that they were supposed to be traveling as commoners, they had a hefty sum of gold and silver with them. Whatever the girl wanted, it wouldn't be a strain on their resources. Maybe she'll tumble in for free. Ha! Helena drained the last of her ale. Not a chance, unless she recognizes him, which is doubtful. Only a tart sleeps with a man she barely knows, and never for free. That might be the strongest opinion he'd ever heard her voice. You don't approve? That's irrelevant. She shook her head. There they go. Robin led Andrew upstairs by the hand. No coins were exchanged that Frederick saw, but maybe they handled the details in private. He had no experience with that sort of thing. I knew a lot of working girls where I grew up. Helena blew out a sigh. Hell, if I hadn't had a powerful soul force, I might have ended up one of them. It was nothing but pure luck to save me from dying from some horrible disease forgotten in a gutter. I don't believe that, Frederick said. Soul force or not, you're too strong a person to let that happen. Even if you hadn't ended up on the warlord's path, you would have found another way out. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind. She reached across the table and took his hand. Thanks. That means more to me than I can tell you. Helena leaned closer and he closed his eyes. Her breath felt warm on his lips. The inn shook and the door exploded. Frederick caught a hint of movement before the sword slammed through Helena's stomach. Thanks for listening to episode 6 of The Lightning. I hope you join me next week for the next episode. You can check out the complete Soul Force saga on my website, jamesewisher.com. Link in the description. Until next time, goodbye.